Welcome to Science Lab. The signs are happening because Jesus is coming soon. Every day we are looking at some of the signs that are happening around us. In this episode, we are going to see signs in Israel.
India's relations with Israel took an interesting U-turn on June 11, 2019, and an important one. Also, when for the first time India voted with Israel on an issue involving the Palestinians.
Now, traditionally, right since the two countries were created as independent republics, just a few months apart from each other, India has been opposing most Israeli positions at the UN and backing the Palestinians or Israel's Arab neighbors. In 2015, India made a first landmark switch when India did not vote with Israel, but it abstained on a resolution at UN Human Rights Commission. There the vote was on accepting its Gaza Commission's report on human rights abuses in Gaza. So India did not vote for the resolution, but India abstained. So that was seen as a landmark shift. 41 countries voted in favor of Israel, 5 abstained. India was one of them.
What has happened now? India voted with Israel, and what was the agency? This was at an agency, a UN agency called ECOSOC, which is UN's Economic and Social Council. And what was issued there?
The issue was whether to give observer status to an NGO which the Palestinians describe as a human rights NGO called Shahed. This organization, which the Palestinians describe as a human rights organization, Israelites call it a terrorist organization because they say this is a link to Hamas and Islamic Jihad.
So India voted against giving observer status to this organization. Israelis have admitted to take a note of it, Israeli media, also the Israeli diplomats, so this is a landmark shift. Now India and Israel have been very close friends for quite some time. But there has been a great deal of hypocrisy in India-Israel relationship. Now if you look at the UN vote, look at the countries that have voted with Israel on this resolution. US, France, Germany, Japan, UK, South Korea, Canada, and among others, of course, India. Look at these countries. None of them is hostile to India. Look at the sample of the countries that voted against Israel on this resolution. These include Pakistan, China, Russia, Saudi Arabia. Now India has a good relationship, but Saudi Arabia desperately needs to keep its facade of hostility to Israel, which doesn't exist anymore. Remember, Saudi Arabia only recently allowed Air India to fly direct over Saudi territory into Tel Aviv, the only international carrier allowed to overfly Saudi territory into Israel. So they have been opening up. There are relations there. There is also common enmity with Iran, but they also seem to be opposing Israel. Of the remaining 3, Pakistan and China, less at the better because that decides which side of the fence India should be on. And third is Russia. Russia has its own issues with America, the Western world right now. Russia is also a nuisance state in Europe. Big nuclear armed state with a big army, with big ambitions, run by a dictator, but really a good economy. So a little bit like Pakistan, a state that punches above its weight, mainly because of its military power. So India has chosen the right company given this combination of forces.
Now, why did I say there's been hypocrisy so far? Because if there wasn't any hypocrisy, this voting conduct should have changed much earlier. 1950, India was among the early countries to recognize Israel. First Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, recognized Israel. But because Nehru then, he was also a socialist. Nehru pitched his ideological commitments and fortunes with Arab world, and with the so-called non-aligned, anti-Western, anti-American universe that India got positioned as a hostile state with Israel.
So from 1950 until 1992, While India had recognized Israel in 1950, there was no Israeli embassy in India because India had not established full diplomatic relations with Israel. But at the same time, there was an Israeli consulate in Mumbai. I think the pretext was that Israelis needed a consulate in Mumbai to look after the interests of Indian Jews who were migrating to Israel. 85,000 to 1 lakh Indian Jews migrated to Israel.
In fact, in those days, you do not take an Israeli visa on your passport because if you did, then countries that don't like Israel with all the Arab countries or Muslim countries would not let you enter with a passport. So you had to carry your visa on a separate sheet of paper visa as we call it. And now you enter Israel, you come out of Israel, and then you fold that visa away so nobody could see on your passport that you had been to Israel. And even from India, that was the situation.
So even at that time, India did not upgrade its relations with Israel. Then suddenly in 1992, India has upgraded its relations with Israel to full diplomatic level. That was the big landmark change that India made. Who made that change? Indian Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. Why did it take Prime Minister Narasimha Rao to make that change? Because Narasimha Rao was now breaking away from the old Nehruvian foreign policy and strategic formulation that Indian foreign policy established that had inherited, and they were unwilling to move away from it, even though the Cold War had now ended between 1989 and 1990. Warsaw Pact was collapsed, the Berlin Wall had fallen, the Soviet Union had broken up, and yet India was still caught up. Indian establishment was still caught up in the old Cold War formulations. So Prime Minister Narasimha Rao broke it. He was very clever. He did it on a day when Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat was in Delhi. He briefed Yasser Arafat in the morning and he asked him that Palestinian-Israeli peace talks are starting now. If peace talks are starting now, would you want it to be better if a friendly country like India is on a negotiating table to help you Palestinians? Arafat said yes, and Narasimha Rao said, so we will have a press conference. Journalists will ask you your views on India upgrading its relations with Israel. Please endorse it, he said. And that's what Arafat did. And from then, this relationship became more normal, and Israelis opened an embassy in Delhi. India opened its embassy in Tel Aviv.
And now is the time for the trivial question of the day. Who was the first Indian Prime Minister to make an official trip to Israel?
Option A, Jawaharlal Nehru. Option B, Rajiv Gandhi. And option C, Narendra Modi.
The answer after a short break.